So recently on May 5th, Alan Shepard became the first American to go to space. Except that was May 5th, 63 years ago. 63 years. Now, most space exploration happened during the space race. Basically, the Soviets and the Americans were in an all-out Cold War, and they were testing their ICBMs and that scary stuff to show who was boss. And the Soviets were like, since we got these intercontinental rockets, let's send them to space to show how our technology is better. So they sent Sputnik 1 to space, and it became the first ever man-made thing to ever go to space. Everybody thinks that satellites are these super big things like JWST, which is the size of a tennis court. But Sputnik 1 was literally the size of a beach ball and only weighed 184 pounds. I could easily carry that. Sputnik 1 surprised the world in good ways and bad ways. The Americans started to get scared because Russia was leveling the playing field in technology. So the Americans created this small program called NASA. What do? And they launched Explorer 1, which became the US's first satellite that went into space. Explorer 1 was launched on a Jupiter-C rocket, which was a modified missile, and it had 4 stages which helped it enter and stay in orbit for more than 12 years. The actual technology part of it in the satellite was at the nose cone of it. So Explorer 1 was a success, but by that time, Russians were already going to the moon. The Luna program was targeted to get Russians to the moon. Luna 2 recorded the first ever hard landing, or crash, on the moon, and Luna 3 made a full circumnavigation of the moon. Guys, this was the late 1950s. This was like 65 years ago. Luna 1, however, requires a whole another video. Comment down below if you guys want to see that. Anyways, Russia continued with Vostok 1 by sending the first man to space and to orbit Earth, Yuri Gagarin, in April of 1961. The US followed up by sending Alan Shepard, but only a year later did the US complete an orbit around the Earth with John Glenn. So Russia was way ahead of the US at this point, because the US was just basically copying everything the Soviets were doing. But these next few years turned the tides around. Alright, speedrun time. The US sent an ape named Ham to space to test a crew module. He survived the entire flight. Yippee! The US claimed the first successful flyby of Venus in 1962 with Mariner 2. Russia previously tried this and did have a flyby, but they lost contact with the ship. Valentina Tereshkova from the Soviets became the first woman to fly to space in 1963. Russia tried a flyby to Mars, but again lost contact. The US tried and succeeded in 1965 with Mariner 4. The Russians really need better antennas. But the Russians made up with the first successful spacewalk in 1965 and the first soft landing on the moon in 1966. But then, everything changed when the Americans landed on the moon. In 1969, I'm sure you already know what happened. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon. You learned stuff in kindergarten. However, a mission on the Russian side was overlooked. September 12th, 1970. Luna 16 launched to go and land on the moon, retrieved a sample, and then fly all the way back to Earth. Luna 16 launched and went to the moon. It entered a stable orbit around the moon until it eventually slowly descended onto the lunar surface. The probe spent 26 hours on the moon until the upper stage eventually left the surface with the samples. It made its way back to Earth and became the first unmanned mission to retrieve samples from the moon. Everything was done robotically, no human help. But the space race was starting to wear out, and the tensions between the US and the Soviet Union were becoming better. In 1975, an American and a Soviet module docked together, and the astronauts shook hands, showing that the relations between the two countries were much better, and that the space race was basically over. If you want to see me post individual videos or short form content on some of these interesting missions, like the video and subscribe to support me. Now check this out.